All right, so wanting to look here, show you guys a video we took yesterday of the exchange between mats, and I think there's some time to be gained out of that in our estimation. Um, so here we're looking at right now we're looking at the last cycle in a mat. It's drilling its last hole, and the nut driver comes down. We get the nut installed. At this point, the clamps will come up, the mat exits, the clamp will drop, the nut drivers move to where the drill is in a second here, and then the drill moves to its next starting position, the clamps come back up, and the next mat begins to move in. Um, the gain I think we could see here, so right here, as a nut driver finishes, if at this point both the nut driver and the drill could move to the starting position, um, the drill really shouldn't need to wait on the nut driver to get there before it starts its move. So before the clamps ever come up, the drill and the nut driver move to their next starting position. And then as I had stopped it a little early. As the clamps come up right here, if the walking boards are synced together at this point, if it would concentrate on moving the next mat in, so the drills and nut drivers are already in position for their starting position. If as that mat exits, the new one is moving in. So we're concentrating on getting the new mat into position as early as possible. We could eliminate this downtime. So that new mat's already moving in, the drill's already in position, so the clamps would stay up. And as soon as the new mat gets into position, it would lock down, start drilling that mat while it's finishing exiting the other mat out. We should be able to get a board or two done on that new mat before we have to worry about crashing with the other. So essentially, we're locking that gap together between those two mats, so to speak. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're really concentrating on getting that next mat in and less on moving the other mat out because the bottleneck's on the incoming mat. I really think there's at least 10 seconds that can be gained between mats. 10 seconds is not a huge deal, and yet when we're looking at everything, at the end of the day, 10 seconds for every mat becomes a huge deal in my mind, or some significant time to be gained there. So that's one. I'm going to see if I can quick open up this other here. So the other component we're looking at is, or I thought maybe some gained. This is just the cycle of how when a nut completes, what you'll see here, it's most apparent at the end of a board when nothing else is moving, but you'll see the nut driver waits to move until the bolt inserter goes down and gets a bolt loaded in, and then everything moves together. My thought would be the nut driver should be released to be moved as soon as it's completed its nut. So if you watch this cycle, right now it could be moving to the next position. The bottom, the bolt inserter, the mat can't move until it's below, but the movement of the drill and the nut driver could be happening while it's withdrawing. See if I can replay that. So as soon as the nut driver goes up, now they move while it's finishing itself. It's just a second or two, but it happens. It's really happening every cycle, I think. But is most apparent as we get to the edge of the mat or we finish up with that dead cycle time. Usually they're out running the drills. Anytime you have a fault or anything else there, I think that comes into play. That's a small gain. The earlier one is probably a larger gain. A couple thoughts on that there. And then the last thought we had, really, I wonder if there would be an opportunity. I think there's a real chance if we reshape these hold downs that we could get clearance for the nut drivers to move with the hold down in its upright position. Um, so generally, the lowest point, even when these clamps are raised, is this heel here, so to speak. And if we reshape those, we probably have to dig a little bit out of that and really taper this down some, maybe change the geometry a bit. But it would create clearance. We were looking. I think the clearance could be created so that they wouldn't raise as high, but you could still get it very close to as much clearance as we have now and leave clearance for those nut drivers to run past it, which would be huge if the clamps could come up, the mat could be moving, and the drills and drivers moving into position. It would take reworking the clamps, making so there's a physical stop so they couldn't raise as high, but I think there's actually clearance in there possibly to do that. So if you look here, I just pulled another screenshot up here. This heel is by far the lowest piece. If that was out, essentially would come down, would be out level. This would be this geometry would be changed to where it was probably a little thinner point coming out there, but we're not putting a tremendous lot of force on that. And as long as we get in the same height here, that nut runner or drill for that matter could move and have clearance. That would be significant because it would happen on every board as well. So if you would, in our case, if we could combine a couple of those things, there would be some significant gain on a mat. So Jason, when I said I felt like we'd taken our foot off maybe the gas of trying to use innovation, push this thing to its max and into completion, and I guess really came out. You mentioned, I feel like we've taken it about as far as we can, and I think in my mind I was thinking, there's still some stuff to flesh out here. So probably should have pushed more on that. I know we've talked through some of those ideas earlier with the team on the floor, met a little resistance, so we kind of dropped it. I'd hoped there would be a push from management to push that time, as we neared runoff and saw where we were at. So maybe I'm going to push for it. You guys don't do it. Maybe something we try to figure out how to do on our own. I feel like we could close the gap a little more on our time there.